So I'm coming to you today feeling a bit burnt out, which is super convenient because that was in fact the topic I had planned to talk about today. And isn't it just great that on the day I'm talking about burnout, I have some real, authentic, farm fresh, free range burnout for you. Isn't this fun? Yeah, like I'm just feeling pretty tired, pretty worn down, feeling fairly unable to do much of anything. It's a miracle that I am here talking like this because like all I want to do is lay in bed and not pursue any of my goals, but I'm trying. Here I am trying. So anyway, I've been thinking about the topic of burnout for quite some time, and I think it kind of came onto my radar as something I might have at the time that viral Anne Helen Peterson, millennials being the burnout generation BuzzFeed essay came onto the scene. And of course I read that article, and when I read that article, this was the moment when I thought, yeah, actually, I think I might be burnt out. Like, I think I might be exactly what's being described here. Because what was described in the article was not entirely, anyway, this like total burnout. You know, the burnout of I worked so hard and so intensely for so long that I became completely incapable of functioning. No, like that was not my burnout. And I feel like even now still, like that's not my burnout experience. Like my burnout is a little more of the subtle variety that's also described in this article. The extreme difficulty of doing basic minor daily tasks that should feel super simple, but that ultimately kind of feel impossible when you actually like get down to having to do them. And these are also tasks that at an earlier point in my life used to be like the simplest, most automatic things in the world. In my particular case, like I feel like the worst one, and the one that is affecting my life so much, and the one that is the reason that I really want to get to the bottom of this burnout issue and cut it off forever, like excise it from my life, is the fact that burnout has essentially made it so that I am incapable of responding to messages from most of my friends. Like, I cannot stand this about myself. And this is a very new thing. Like, well, not a very new thing. This is a thing of like the past several years, but it's not a forever thing. And I know it's not like a feature of how I am and how I interact in the world. Like, I used to be able to carry on conversations over, you know, whatever messaging app of the moment we have. And I used to be able to correspond with people pretty regularly, but since I started to fall into this state of, I believe, semi-burnout, I have been having an impossible time. And I've thought before, maybe it's like a perfectionist thing, you know, it's like maybe I'm like kind of afraid to respond because I'm like, oh, well, what's the perfect response? Like, how do I respond in a way that is gonna say exactly what I wanna say and is that it's gonna reply perfectly to whatever they said, it's gonna be funny and interesting and engaging. But actually, like, the more I think about it, it's like, no, it's not even that. Like, most of the time, I even know what I would say. I know I could just type it out and be like, oh, there it is, and hit send, and then we have a conversation. But it isn't quite like that. It's more like I receive messages and a mental wall automatically goes up. It's just like I become incapable of going onto my phone, typing the message, hitting send, and engaging in a conversation. So this inability to reply to messages, I kind of worry might be sort of like my canary in the coal mine of more intense burnout coming at me very soon. Like, we're talking like maybe I am on a fast track to like this non-functional type of burnout that I know people do experience. And I think like I would probably be a good candidate for that type of burnout given the way that I can be sometimes, the intensity with which I can pursue things. And so I wanted to nip that in the bud. I had the idea that to cleanse myself of the burnout, that I should take a break from my freelance work and take a few weeks off, clear my calendar, tell my clients I'm not going to be there for 2 whole weeks. And for part of that, I also had plans to go to Toronto. I know how it's supposed to be said. Like, sorry to all of the Torontonians. That I know, because it's like pretty ingrained now that like I'll say it like Toronto, even though I know it's Toronto. Anyway, I had plans to go there, and so I thought that would be a perfect opportunity to cleanse myself of my burnout. Guess what? I'm going on a trip tomorrow. I'm going to Toronto. and I'm pretty excited for something new and different. Okay, I'm gonna bring dress, 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 fish shorts to sleep in, but also like I would love to wear these fish shorts just like out in my real life, but I feel like I'm not there yet, you know. I feel like I'm gonna get there, but I'm not there. But someday I really want to, and just like watch the space, you know, like one day the fish shorts may become a fixture. That's what I got so far. I don't know what else I'll bring. Maybe a lot of other stuff, maybe not that much other stuff. Anyway, it turns out the update in my life right now is that I seem to be taking about 2 weeks off from my freelance work for the first time in like a couple of years, like really, and I'm pretty excited about it. And also like I just feel like it's really necessary. Like I feel that I'm living very much in a state of fight or flight, and I have been living in a state of fight or flight for quite some time now, and I'm really ready to like break out of it and kind of break the cycle of fight or flight that I found myself in. And so like I just thought maybe I would give a bit of a rundown of the past, I don't know, like 5 years, like really 5 years, or more than 5 years even, because I think like everything started in about 2019, or the path of burnout that I find myself on currently started in about 2019, January of 2019. In fact, on a very particular day when I had to leave my life in London because my student visa expired and I couldn't stay in the city where I had lived for many years previously. So that was horrible, wasn't it? I mean, God, I talk about it all the time. It must have been bad. But basically from there, it was like left London, moved to New York, unemployment for several months, really thought I was like never gonna find a job, and that I was in fact unemployable, which I mean maybe I still am, like I'm not sure. And after that found a job. Job was like the most horrible like nonprofit corporate nonsense you could have ever possibly imagined. After that, well, I got that job. Pandemic hit shortly after. I wanted to quit that job but felt that I could not because the situation due to the pandemic was too uncertain, and I was like, well, if I quit my job, then what am I going to do otherwise, because there are no other jobs. And eventually though I did end up quitting that job, went freelance, even though I had no idea what I wanted to do as a freelancer, and had like basically 0 clients and made basically 0 money, and I was still living in New York. It's been exhausting, and it's definitely led me to this state of being where I cannot find joy. This week I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna try not really, okay, like, I mean, I feel like I'm like cheating here because I'm not even taking a full-on break, but I'm gonna try to like calm down for a week, and I'm gonna try to only do things that I want to do for the next like 2 weeks basically, and I'm gonna see where that leads me. I'm gonna see if the fight or flight response starts to fade, and I hopefully will end up a lot happier at the end of this, and hopefully will have indeed cured a portion of the burnout that has set in over the past 5 or so years, because I don't know what to call it but burnout. Although I have not completely burnt out yet. I'm still basically functioning, but on a level that I don't think is good for me or anyone else who wants to ever receive like a sociable message from me ever again. So let's see how it goes. So there I was in a new place. I'd made a promise to myself to just be present in my current reality, to just enjoy the experience. And Toronto truly was great. We stayed in Little Italy and it had this calm, creative, friendly feel. So my surroundings were excellent, but I didn't feel calm in myself. I kept worrying what overwhelm awaited me on my return. I just couldn't truly disconnect. And I think it was because I knew this break was only temporary. So after my experience of going away for a few nights and having a really nice time, but really not feeling any different about my life as it stands, I started to come to the realization that maybe no amount of traveling and taking myself out of my normal comfort zone activities for a period of a few days is actually going to cure me. That maybe the issue ran deeper here, because the whole time that I was there and I was feeling this absolute fear and dread over what was coming around the corner when I came back to my real life, it made me start to wonder if perhaps the approach I was taking to my life overall just was not sustainable, and if maybe it's really time to take some steps to get through this burnout phase. And so I started thinking that, well, first of all, in the last, let's say, 5 or so years specifically, but like really intensively, like in the last couple of years, I have been trying to make a real go of like taking my creative projects very seriously. I've talked about this a lot on here, but like it's like a major theme of my life. Like it's actually a big part of why I'm like doing this whole interface. But basically though, I had this idea that I need to start taking my creative projects much more seriously, that I need to be writing consistently, I need to be looking at avenues for publication, I need to be doing all this stuff. I need to be basically thinking creatively all the time. And I also, though, at the same time, was still kind of in the last maybe phases of still thinking that I should also have a certain type of relatively successful career. And I think that's where I potentially went very, very wrong. I think that might be the source of this potentially intractable semi-burnout that I'm experiencing these days. Because all the while I'm trying to do creative projects, which do take quite a bit of time, I'm also trying to pursue this false idea that a career of a certain form is a good thing. And I'm talking specifically about sort of a professional sort of career, a type, you know, an office job, even though it may not be in an office anymore, but like the office jobs of the past, the jobs where you wear a certain type of, I don't know, business casual clothing and you work on a computer and the work is very clean. It maybe is like pseudo-creative or like has potentially creative elements to it without being actually creative. Like really, it's just kind of like making money, but it's pretending at that kind of thing. Or it involves a lot of like intense thinking. It involves like management structures, that kind of career. You know what I mean. The fact of having one of these jobs, though, is that they are ultimately extremely draining. And they're not necessarily draining because of difficulty, but they're draining because of the number of tasks you have to do, the expectations for quality in those tasks. I guess, like, you know, appeasing the managers can be a very difficult thing. And basically also, like, producing work that is to a certain corporate standard. Even if you, like me, don't really work for a corporation, there's still a pressure to produce things to a certain kind of corporate world standard to please the corporate funders if, say, you work at a nonprofit, or to please the powers that be if you are an academic. Like, that's the type of work you have to do. The standards are often very arbitrary. There's often not really a clear statement of why things are done in a certain way or why a certain way of presenting information is seen as superior to others. Like why things have to be graphic designed in a certain format or why language has to use all this jargon. Like it's not explained really. It's just kind of like assumed that you will do it and you will internalize it into yourself and you will be a part of it and it will be you and you will be it. And so I come increasingly to the realization that perhaps none of this is sustainable and perhaps I can't maintain that idea of having the successful career while also trying to do something that feels better and truer to myself. But at the same time, it's like I want to make a contribution to society, of course. I don't want to give everything up. And I think I'm still trying to work past the old ingrained belief that that contribution to society will be through working for a certain employer and having a certain kind of job and status and rank within the hierarchy of an organization. And it's really only recently that I've started to kind of detach myself from that assumption. And it isn't easy because I'm still afraid of what it would mean to like leave behind that vision of success. And I really don't know what it would lead to. And that is very, very frightening to me. But even so, though, I also understand that that vision, that old vision of success doesn't lead actually like qualitatively to a feeling that I am contributing anything to the world. And you know, David Graeber talked about this in the book Bullshit Jobs, and it kind of talked about the mental turmoil that comes with doing something that feels very important and very professional and very aligned with what society wants of us, but at the same time feeling that it doesn't necessarily contribute anything. And when you finish it at the end of the day, you're kind of just like, okay, well, what was the point in that? Like, why did I do it? And like, that's where I'm kind of landing too, where it's like all of this stuff that I've been told is important to me kind of starts to seem unimportant. And I write all this stuff for, say, an employer, and I'm just like, wait, but where does this lead? Like, what does this do? Who benefits from it? And I don't fully understand why I'm doing it. And so it's like kind of a double blow of demotivation, where you're expending a ton of like thought and energy to do something, and then at the same time, you're expending a ton of thought and energy on wondering why you don't feel satisfied with the products. And so that's where I've ended up. And that is, I think, what brought me to this point of like feeling completely and utterly burnt out in my own life, and feeling like there's nothing I can do to change it, and feeling like I might just need to like go into a full burnout spiral and like not be able to get out of bed for several weeks, and just like have that like be the real cutoff point for what I'm doing. But also I don't really want to. Like that seems foolish, doesn't it? Doesn't it? And I think it comes back to this reason why I can't seem to respond to anyone's messages, and why I just start to feel worse and worse and worse about it. And it is just because I feel like I have no energy left at the end of the day. I don't have anything else to give. I can't give like, you know, the interest and the kindness and the engagement that I want to give people, and that I know I really should give people, and that they give to me, and that I know I owe to them, but it puts me in this position where I just can't. But finally though, to avoid what I hope will not be a spiral into total non-functionality in my life through the burnout cycle that I have found myself a part of, I have decided I'm implementing basically a set of, I think, 3 rules for, not even rules. Rules would be wrong. Rules gives the wrong impression. I don't want there to be rules, but 3 kind of guidelines for a better quality of life in the future. And the first is to prioritize other people. Above all, that is the number 1 guideline. It's like every day I should be thinking about, how am I responding to others? How am I reaching out to them? Am I replying to messages? Do I have messages left in my inbox that are like several months overdue? And you know, I just have to hope that when I respond, the people receiving them will not hate me. I have to hope so. Second is to try to learn a concrete skill or hobby, to just have something to do that is more like with my hands. I can't exactly explain this, but I think this might also come back to the contributing to society thing. Like perhaps in the future, I won't be making money off of my creative endeavors. However, I would hope that maybe I can do something that's just a little more tangible, and that maybe if I'm just doing something where like I go into work, I perform a function, and then I leave and I know I have performed that function, that I'll feel a little less kind of that mental burden that I feel currently, where it's like every day just feels like such a mental struggle, and then all the mental struggle over like, why do I not feel good about it? Like that, I'd kind of like to eliminate. And I think maybe the way to eliminate that is to see if it's maybe time to just switch out of the career mindset and switch into something that's just a bit like, yeah, more concrete, more tangible. I don't know if that's like working in a bar, coffee shop. I've been cutting my own hair. Maybe it's time to learn that as a real skill. I don't know if it looks good. I don't know. I kind of like it. And the third is very vague and very broad and very general, but to work towards something that perhaps feels like it will give me more autonomy in the future, more freedom to live my life as I want to live it. And I hope that with these 3 things, I can end up in a better place and avoid further burnout and not lose all of my friends. I think that's my first hope. And second is to, yeah, just like be happier in my quality of life, and not just end up stuck to this bed one day, unable to rouse myself. Like that's what I'm hoping. Yeah, we're gonna see how it goes. Anyway, I guess that's that.